So this video is going to be about the Greyjoy Rebellion and how Theon Greyjoy wound up as a ward of House Stark living at Winterfell. There's a lot of familiar faces that were involved in the Greyjoy Rebellion. Robert Baratheon, Ned Stark, Tywin Lannister, Stannis Baratheon, Jorah Mormont, Barristan Selmy, Thoros of Myr, to name but a few. But before we can really get into it, we have to look back at House Greyjoy in the years leading up to their rebellion. It took place about 5-6 years after Robert's rebellion, where Robert Baratheon found himself as the new king of the Seven Kingdoms, defeating House Targaryen in the process. During Robert's rebellion, House Greyjoy were led by this man, Lord Quelon Greyjoy, and he had 4 sons that survived to adulthood: Balon, Euron, Victarion and Aeron Greyjoy. The Greyjoys were kind of slow to come to the aid of Robert Baratheon. They wanted to hedge their bets and see, how is this going to play out? Just like their neighbours down the coast, the Lannisters, they did the same thing. Let's just see what happens before we pick a side. But Quelon's sons urge him, you've got to get involved. We've got to show our loyalty. And eventually House Greyjoy do just that. But their involvement in Robert's rebellion, it was minimal to say the least. But Lord Quelon, he was pretty old at this point and he wasn't in the best of health. He died at sea during Robert's rebellion. He is then succeeded by his eldest son, Balon. And Balon was a very different type of fish to his father. Balon did not want to be part of the Seven Kingdoms. He wanted to secede the Iron Islands, to go and do their own thing, to not be at the beck and call of a king on the mainland. So Balon was biding his time, and he spent the years between Robert's Rebellion and the Greyjoy Rebellion rebuilding the fleet, making sure it's top-notch, getting new ships created, the whole thing. He was getting the Greyjoys ready. In the meantime, Balon was married and had 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter. The first 2 sons were Roderick and Moron Greyjoy. Then came Asha/Yara. They changed it to Yara on the show so it wouldn't confuse with the character Osha. They did the same thing with Robert and Robin Arryn, so you wouldn't get confused with Robert Baratheon. For the purposes of this, I always just go with Yara because I really loved Gemma's portrayal of her on the show. His youngest child is a son, Theon. The motivation, the reason why Balon is doing all of this is because he believes in the old ways, which is basically the ways of House Greyjoy, the ways of the Ironborn. Because of the conditions on these islands where you can't grow a whole lot, they don't have the resources to survive in the way that you would if you lived anywhere else. So the Ironborn see it as, we have no choice. We've got to go out and reave and raid and take from others. Otherwise we will not survive because our islands just do not grow trees or crops. There is a very real belief that they have to sever themselves from the Seven Kingdoms because the laws of the Seven Kingdoms under King Robert Baratheon, they are not compatible with the Ironborn way of life. And Balon makes the calculation that because Robert Baratheon is fairly new to being king, he came about being king after a rebellion of his own, he thought, Robert's reign is not completely stable, and he thought, this is the time to launch my own rebellion. Now's the time to strike. The Greyjoy Rebellion begins with an attack led by Euron and Victarion Greyjoy on the Lannister fleet, which was stationed at Lannisport. So they came down from the Iron Islands and attacked the fleet. Victarion Greyjoy made it his personal mission to throw a flame into the ship that belonged to Tywin Lannister, his flagship. Because there's no love lost between the Lannisters and the Ironborn. They targeted the Lannister fleet in order to clear the path so that the Ironborn would have supremacy over the Sunset Sea. Then they set their sights inland, on the mainland of Westeros. The Greyjoy forces attack Seaguard, the home of House Mallister. It is during the attack on Seaguard that Balon Greyjoy's eldest son, Roderick Greyjoy, Theon's older brother, he is killed attempting to storm the fortress. The Mallisters push them back and the Iron Islanders have to flee. They head back home and they try and regroup. This is where Stannis Baratheon comes into the story. He is not only Robert's brother, but he is Robert's master of ships, which means that Stannis has at his disposal the enormous royal fleet. So he sets sail and he comes around here and he joins up with the Red Wine fleet and they go all the way around here right to where the action is. It all kicks off just around here off the coast of Fair Isle. There is an enormous battle at Fair Isle, and Victarion Greyjoy is leading the Greyjoy forces, and they're coming head to head with this armada led by Stannis Baratheon. The youngest of Quelon Greyjoy's sons, Aeron Greyjoy, Theon's uncle, he is taken captive during this battle, and he is thrown into the dungeons at Casterly Rock for the remainder of the rebellion. What happens in the waters around Fair Isle? It is a huge defeat for the Greyjoys and a massive victory for the crown. Robert Baratheon is like, I want to get in on this action. He'd already called on Ned Stark and Tywin Lannister as Wardens of the North and West to summon the Bannermen to get people ready to fight the rebellion. But Robert, he wanted to be involved. You know he loves a scrap. What happens next is called the Siege of Pyke, which is the seat of House Greyjoy. This is where Balon is. It's during the Siege of Pyke that Ser Barristan pops up, and Ser Jorah and Thoros, they're all involved. Robert Baratheon is there in full war gear. Ned Stark is there. They're coming for Balon, and they break down part of the outer wall. Balon's second son, his new heir, Merron Greyjoy, he falls during this battle. So Balon has lost his two eldest sons. That leaves behind Yara and Theon as Balon Greyjoy's last surviving heirs. Now, there was some pretty savage fighting, but the crown does prevail, and the Greyjoy rebellion is a bust. They tried it. It was a gamble, but it didn't pay off. It turns out Robert did have quite a lot of supporters in his corner, ready and willing to fight. The end result is Balon Greyjoy is forced to bend the knee to Robert Baratheon and swear fealty to him. He had no choice. It was like, you gotta do this now or it's curtains. So Balon, he had no choice. He had to capitulate. And one last thing was that he had to send his last surviving son, Theon, to Winterfell to serve as a ward for Ned Stark. This was intended to ensure Balon and House Greyjoy and the Iron Islands in general's compliance to the crown. And also it serves as a warning to any other house. If you try and rebel, you'll fail and we'll take one of your children as a hostage. When we join the story, when we first meet Theon, it's about 9-10 years after the failed Greyjoy rebellion. And everyone is still pretty salty about it.